Hey, welcome to Exploring the Marketplace Live Conversations. Bob, you're here this time. I'm so glad to see you.
Shawn, I am.
That's awesome. We had such a good talk with Christian Garrett when you were on vacation. And man, venture capitalist, young guy. He was on our Exploring the Marketplace episode, and then he answered questions. Did you get a chance to hear any of that?
I did. He is so brilliant. And I was so taken on our podcast with him, how brilliant he is and how the Lord has used him so much in the marketplace and his area of influence, and how he just loves giving things away.
Yeah, and he's just so rightly confident. I love his confidence in God and his life, and it's just so cool. So I actually woke up this morning and hit the ground running hard, and with my daughters are at home instead of at school today, and so we have to do their homeschool. And then I got a bunch of TBN episodes for my new show that's coming out, and so I'm supposed to be screening through those at some point today because I have to turn back any feedback today. Of all that. Of course, that's how it works. But they're great. I was so excited to see them. And you're in one of them. I haven't seen your episode yet, but yeah, right. You're in one of them. You're in one of them, and it's about the names of God, which is really fun. So it's just been you and I are recording Exploring the Marketplace. Yay!
We've only done 10 recordings in 3 days, Shawn. Are you tired of me yet?
No, I love being with you. It's so awesome. Well, for those of you who are joining on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or a platform, Bob and I are doing this usually about every 2 weeks, where we get on with you guys on Thursdays and we just allow any questions you have. Sometimes we have one of our influencers with us. Sometimes it's just us. Any questions that you guys have about the marketplace, about what we're doing, about maybe something in your own career, your own place of influence. And Bob and I right now, just before we get into that, are walking through the last process of publishing a book together called Wired to Hear. And it's all about hearing God's voice in those places of career, influence, entrepreneurship, business, marketplace. And it takes the themes that I've been teaching for now a couple decades, and it takes Bob's life experience of 45 plus years in the marketplace and consulting and helping people. And it puts it together into a way that you guys are really going to be able to have kind of like an architectural plan for how to grow and hearing God's voice in those places. And so this morning, we're just going to kind of dialogue back and forth, Bob, because one of the things that we love to do is empower people, especially who say, I'm not really prophetic or I don't hear God. But here's
I'm glad I never said that. I never said that.
Yeah, exactly. You never said that at all. I was like, you've always been.
I didn't walk around most of my life thinking that I didn't hear God.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you and I get around all these people, men and women, who are high performers, high achievers, and their fruit is kingdom fruit, but they're not drawing the parallels between how God spoke to them and how that fruit happened, because we think hearing from God is a direct process of a disruptive voice saying, look this way. And so I love in our first couple chapters how we lay out and just how we create that dialogue on the podcast all the time of, how do you hear from God?
Hey, let me ask you a question. Do you think I could show our people who are watching the book cover? Because I have it.
Yes. Well, yeah, let's do it. Let's surprise. This is the first time it's ever been seen. Come on, let's do it.
It is. I mean, I've seen it, but I just want to show it. Look at this. Wired to
Well, we're excited.
Look at that.
Wired to Hear. It shows Wired. I picked that Wired. I get any credit if it looks good. If it doesn't look good, it was all Bob.
Shawn's the cover designer. And I love the subtitle, Shawn, Connecting God's Voice to Your Life, Influence, and Career.
Okay, so this isn't just a book advertisement. We do want to talk to you guys about hearing God's voice in the marketplace, but the book is going to help you. You can pre-order it today. If you pre-order at bullsministries.com, not just Amazon or Barnes & Nobles or other places that books are sold, but if you pre-order with us, so it comes out, I think, May 1st or 2nd. So if you pre-order with us, you're going to get a video series about our friends who've been on Exploring the Marketplace, and a few others, I think, who are going to be sharing what they wish they would have known in God and in their career early on. If they could talk to their younger self, what would they tell them? So you're going to get an exclusive video series, and you're also going to get a signed copy as well as some other incentives as well. So you'll get it before everybody else who's buying the book as well. So you're going to get it early. So Bob and I are about to sign like 1,000 books to send out, which is, we're both signing. Are you coming up to my house?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So Bob's coming to my house. So I would encourage you to get the book, and just so you don't have to remember it, go to Bulls Ministries, even while you're watching this. Get the book now. It'll help you. But that's all we're going to talk about directly, on that pre-order deal that we have. But I want to make sure you know it. So Bob, when we talk about hearing God's voice in the business place, in the marketplace and career and influence. One of the things that I love that you and I both help people with, because a lot of our consulting ends up helping people to find God in the midst of what they're working on, especially in the problems. And so we're helping people to discern, hear God, their intuition, their gut, their instinct. I use a thing I call reverse engineering, which is I look for the last 3 to 5 big wins in people's business and career. And then I ask them, where were you at when you were making those decisions? Let's talk about it. And usually by 3 to 5 wins, and you can practice at home, we start to see the parallels of how that person hears from God, and actually open the book up that way as well, where we tell one of those stories. But how do you feel like most people hear from God when it comes to their career, their direction, their life purpose?
Well, I'm looking at the comments, and already Marina has said that she has a hard time hearing from God, and it's frustrating. And so this is exactly what we're talking about, Marina. When I was, young, growing up into my faith, I was surrounded by a bunch of people who heard God, and it was incredible. They heard the audible voice of God, and it was like James Earl Jones, and the Lord says, and I would kind of sit around, And it took me years and years to really recognize that there's this still small voice, Shawn. And that's the answer to your question, is that he speaks to us by who we are and who our personalities are. And I hear way differently than you do. Well, everybody hears way differently than you do, but I know less. I hear the Lord. And so it's so freeing. And in our first chapter of our book is called Here. And you do talk about reverse engineering a big win in one of your friends' life. And it's so amazing to hear how you worked through that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of us who feel like we don't hear from God and go through phases of that, or there's ebbs and flows to even how we recognize God in our life. A lot of it's just learning how we're wired. And that's why, I wanted to name this book Wired. We almost didn't. I'm so glad we did, Wired to Hear, because there's something about recognizing how God created you, and how he created you to receive the God of all the universe, who's outside of time and space, decided to live in you through your relationship with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And so he lives inside of you, and he shares 1 Corinthians 2, which is, to me, is the clearest way that Paul ever laid out the prophetic or hearing God's voice. He says the Holy Spirit searches the deepest places of the Father and the deepest places of you and connects them together. And then you have the mind or the perceptions of Christ about that. So basically, he's saying you get downloaded thoughts, and we understand it because we have devices like iPads and iPhones and Samsung Galaxies and whatever you have, Google phones, that your phone is accessing the internet, the cloud, to update all the time. But you don't always see what's happening on the face level, but your apps now work differently or something's happening. So recognizing how we hear from God is also recognizing a process that's not always directly verbal. And if you study psychology, about 70% of communication in a mature relationship is nonverbal communication. So the more mature you get, the less verbal communication you need. So sometimes we go to God and we're saying, God, I need you to help me in my marriage to work something out. And he's like, okay, I'm on it. But you don't hear the, okay, I'm on it. And then all of a sudden something breaks through, or some great conversation happens, and you don't recognize that that's God. And he actually put that together. And when you don't recognize those moments, you don't give him glory for those moments. And you just think things got better. You think life happened and whatever. Life's never just happening for somebody who's praying. Life's never, for someone who's connected.
I think that's the amazing thing about the difference between people who believe and people who don't have faith yet, is that our stress levels can be so much lower because we're in partnership with God. And we do, just like what you just said, we do trust that everything that we've asked for, that we've submitted to the Lord. And so it's not we're not walking on our own. We're not our own God. We're not in control of our lives. Actually, the Lord is walking before us, and he's speaking to us, and he's directing our paths. I mean, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. He says that if we acknowledge him in all our ways, he will direct our paths.
Yes.
And we can stand and trust in God that way.
Well, I'm seeing a couple of the comments on here too, Bob, where Nanette was saying, when Kat's the scripture references 1 Corinthians 2, and read from the beginning to end. It's a great chapter. It's going to help you a whole bunch. But I'm just reading through just some of your comments of, like, even Gunnar saying, thank God we don't all hear the same, which I agree, because it's like, thank God we don't do marriage the same, because what I do in my marriage and connected intimacy is different than how you're going to flow. And the way that Sri and I resolve conflict, the way that we have deeper talks, the way that we date is not going to work for your style of life and relationship. And so we're all so different. There's people watching, Bob, from Dubai, Kodiak, Alaska, from all over America. There's people from all over Brazil. There's people from everywhere on right now just joining us from the different platforms that we're on. So I do want to acknowledge the world and say, hello, you guys. We're so glad that you guys are on and joining us. Now, I want to open it up in just a minute for questions. So if you have a question about hearing God's voice in the marketplace, something you're working on or doing, we want to pull some of those questions out. We have about 10 to 12 more minutes here together, 15 at the most. And so we want those questions to come in. And thank you for everyone who's saying hello again, Eugene, Oregon. It's so cool. And those of you who are dealing with a lot of hardship in your lives, it's Jesus is the answer for that. And if you've had a religious relationship with Jesus, it's not going to work. You have to have it connected. And all you got to do is just open your heart, open your hands, and just say, Jesus, I want to know you for real, for real. And I know you already have prayed that I would know you in John 17. So here I am. So that'll help you. Okay.
So Jason says that he's in public accounting. Jason, thank you for being in public accounting. I know that we don't have this too many discussions about the Lord and the marketplace, but here we are. And this book that we've written is about that. And we love accountants. They've saved us so many times, haven't they, Shawn? And they've showed us what we need to do and how we need to walk. Thank you for doing that, Jason. And I'm glad that you're serving us by being in accounting.
I love it. So here's a practical question, and this is a good one for you, Bob. Nick was asking, if you were going to a job interview today, how would you prepare for it, and how would you sell yourself? You stopped him all of a sudden. He got all quiet.
Nick. Well, first I'd have a really good resume, and I would have prayed before I went to the interview and asked the Lord. One of the things I like to do before I go into really hard meetings, whether they're interviews or negotiations, is ask the Lord to go before me and prepare the way and prepare the hearts of the people that I'm meeting, so that what I'm looking for, whether it's a job or a negotiation, the Lord's already put before me. And it makes me feel so much more confident as I walk into the meeting. So I try that experiment, Nick.
I love that. And again, going back to some of you guys are asking about hearing God's voice, I think going back into recognizing the moments in the week and the month, and even maybe going backwards a month if you're having a hard day and saying, okay, in my career, in my job, in my business, whatever I'm doing, I need to do this in ministry or being a mom, it doesn't matter. But recognizing the wins, recognizing those wins and saying, God, thank you for the wins, being grateful and say, okay, you're already doing it. There's already momentum in my life. So like today, we got our final notice from First Republic for our business that our PPP was approved. If those of you know who in America, we have a protection plan for payroll. And so we were able to keep our employees during that hardest time last year because the government allowed us to have 3 months payroll covered as a grant, but you had to apply for it. And there's no certainties. And for us, like I personally have never done a grant that way for the government. I've never worked on this, and I've worked on it really hard with our team. And it was amazing because I was like, I mean, the bank would tell us, we don't know if this is going to work. We don't know what's happening. We don't know the laws. We don't know the requirements. And so we did the best we could, and survived those 3 months. Because of that, we would have been really, I mean, Bob knows we would have had a hard time. So like today is a good day because we knew we already got it. We already had the benefit of it, but that might have been a loan hanging over our heads for many years if we didn't get approved. And I kind of felt like we were going to get approved, but just the fact that it happened today, it makes me just look back and go, God, you love what we're building more than we love it. As a business owner, I thank you so much for our employees that we've been able to keep employed, and that the government helped us, and that you use this in the thread of our existence to thread in your will and your heart for us. And so recognizing those moments, those big wins that help you through life is not something that just the government did or you did, but God, you allowed us to apply when a lot of people applied too late and didn't get it. They didn't get in first round or even second round. And we applied literally the week that was the final deadline for first round. And we have our employees. Glenn, who's on here moderating this, is because he's stayed hired during those months at hard time because of that. And so I think that's really powerful.
It is powerful. And I have been in business for over 40 years and never seen a grant or anything like this. And for all of you out there who are operating your business or who are, working in a business, it's gotten very hard. And this is a 100-year event.
Yeah.
One of the things I was telling Shawn is I have mentors who are in their mid to late 80s, and I can't even ask them because they haven't lived
Yeah.
through an economic or health pandemic. This is all new ground, and we have to trust God in this in a new way and hear his still small voice, and we have to really, really be tuned in.
Yeah, I have a great question from Jason. Jason says, if God shows you what stock to invest in as a new investor, is he telling you to wait for him to move into different stocks, or is it him trying to get me to learn the market with wisdom? Now, stock market, I'll just say this before Bob answers. It's one of those things that we do have some friends that have a gift of investing in stock market. It's a legitimate market to invest in, but it can be gambling. And I used to work with a great group that invested with wisdom. It was called Investing with Insight. And they had some really good wins and some really big losses, all from hearing from God. And they learned through it. And I watched their process, and it really inspired me that they got closer to God. But they had some losses where they felt like they heard from God and it didn't work. So if you're going into it, what they end up teaching their people is like, don't risk something on the prophetic that you're not, that's going to change your quality of life, but actually do it in the context of the blessing of life, not the need of life. Don't do this as you would start up an entrepreneurship where all money's in. Like sometimes that happens when you're starting a business. You can't do that with the stock market because it can change so quickly. And what you've heard, if you didn't hear the next step, you might miss it all. And so just go slower in that context of what you're learning how to hear from God in.
Yeah, one of the things I love about how Shawn teaches is in the prophetic gift practice. I know, Shawn, when you were young, you went through the phone directory at your church and you called people and had prophetic words for them. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is my son is a financial manager. When he was in school, he was so interested in the stock market, but he didn't have any money. But he did a phantom stock market for years. He invested. He found a website, an app that he invested in, and he tracked the stocks. Only there was no money. And each month he would look at his returns, and each quarter he'd look at his returns, and each year he'd look at his returns, and that prepared him for when he actually did have money and finally get investors into his fund.
That's so
He had
cool.
already been working with stocks and understood them for years before he actually started investing money.
I've heard of people doing that. I think that's so brilliant. It's like I've actually talked to several of my friends who wanted to become investors, stock investors, and they did that. They did basically a shadow. I think it's called shadow investing when you're not really doing it yet. And I think it's so brilliant because it's just a great training ground for people who are learning how to hear God's voice to in the stock market to where there's no risk in it. And I don't think God's going to look at you and go, "Why didn't you do?" I mean, I wish I would have invested in Bitcoin. In 1998, a friend told me about it and said, you should just put like $30 in. $30 in 1998 would equal about $200 million now. And I never invested once into it. But I felt like I could do this. But I don't have a would I, could I, should I, whatever like that. Well, woulda, coulda, should have. I just look at it and go, God brings things back around, and we do what we were supposed to do when we're walking with God. There's some really good questions on here about as an employer, perhaps at some point, employees in your lives, what are some of the company culture standards you observed in that had kingdom impact? And I'll say this, Bob has some really good stuff that's in the book, Wired to Hear. Again, it's not trying to sell it to you, but this is why we wrote the book, is because it actually addresses some of that kind of stuff. But go ahead, Bob.
We believe in culture, Shawn, and you had a book, Keys to Heaven's Economy, that was so beautiful that changed so many people's lives in the marketplace. And I wrote a book called Business of Honor, which is about culture. And Shawn and I in Wired to Hear took the best of that and a whole bunch of new stuff and talked about culture and hearing God. So I think there's plenty of resources out there to learn how to build culture.
There's some really good resources. I paused because I'm looking at the questions, and there's one that I wanted to go back to. Here it is. Lord help me. There's a good one. I'll get there. We have time for one more question at least. Here we go. Jimmy Esther Terrell. I'm not sure if it's a husband and wife. I have a day job in business. My day job pays really well. My business is seasonal, but has paid even more the last couple of years. Jump ship and go on to the business. So basically, do I leave my day job? And we have a lot of friends who have day jobs and businesses. This is very common. And that navigating that tipping point of when to jump in, all in, is a big deal.
Okay, so I get asked this question all the time, and for a while it's both and. Let's say you're working 85% of your time in your day job right now, and you're working 15% in your business. I would never advocate, unless somehow you got an angel investor and all of a sudden your business was fully invested. I would never advocate to quit the day job, but you have many, many hours in the day to work on your business and your business plan while you're working on your day job. And so maybe it moves to 75%, 25%. And then as the Lord breathes on your business, it might move to 60%, 40%. And there'll be a tipping point when you'll note, there's just not enough hours in the day. I'm working 80 hours a week on both business, my day job and my business. And I have to make a decision. And that's when you use your friends and advisors and mentors to figure out, okay, what's the next step?
That is so good. And that's the practical. I was like, what's the next step? Get the advisors, get your feeling from God, make sure that you have a plan financially before you go into it. You don't want to start at a low end. You want to start with some savings and everything else. I've watched some people go leave their career job, especially in my field, because we're in the entertainment industry. So like leave their career to do entertainment, but you need a year to 2 years of reserves to even try.
Yeah.
And so then they come in with like, I have $700 in the bank. And you're like, what? Why are you here? Go back to work. Okay. Marina Alvarez, I'm just going to answer this real quick for you. And it's a good question. How do I know what my talents or gifts are? What can I do to find out? I would encourage you. Most of us are supposed to be developed in our core family unit in those areas, but some of us didn't have that. And so your core family is your discovery zone when you're growing up for discovering your talents and your gifts. And your gifts are things that you can actually typically monetize or do as ministry. They're things that are beyond talents. Talents could be like I draw and I have fun. It's one of the ways that God gives me rest, or I golf and it's fun. But your gifts, you might be a gifted golfer, a gifted artist, where you could actually have another stream of income, or you could have a ministry out of it. And so I want to encourage you, go on the journey of self-discovery. And there's a lot of ways to do that. If you weren't given a parenting or caregiver person who helped you discover that, God, it's one of the primary things he does. He's the comforter, counselor, and developer through the Holy Spirit. So I want to encourage you to just trust him in that. And then somebody else, and I can't find who it was, asked, what do I do when there's a vendor I'm working with that comes from a different culture, and it's just really hard? Like, basically, how do I navigate that kind of partnership with somebody who has an opposite belief, and yet they're offering to be a supplier? Sarah T.
Did you find what it was?
How do we navigate the partnering with people who I know have an opposite belief, yet offering to become a supplier?
Well, I've been in business for almost 45 years, and I have suppliers and vendors who don't believe the same as me. But what I'm always looking for is ethics, morality, and character. So we have the ability, if people do the right thing, if their yes is yes and their no is no. I've been in situations when I've been working with believers who have not had character and morality and ethics and not done the right thing, and I haven't worked with them. So in the business realm, we have this amazing ability to be able to be with people of all beliefs, but we're looking for people who are doing the right thing. What do you think, Shawn?
I think the same thing. I think we're looking for people who service our industry well and have integrity and character. But ultimately, I mean, there's a thing like even big tech companies and stuff were buying for a little while from this brokerage in Africa, one of the minerals that they needed to create smart devices. And they found out that this broker actually was using stuff from Congo, from the war zones, from warlords. And they found out that was, that's why you don't buy diamonds anymore that aren't clean diamonds, that aren't ethical diamonds, because a lot of this is child labor and these kinds of things. And so we're learning real time as a society and as a world what is ethical in the world and what's not. And so is Microsoft villainized or demonized because they bought from the wrong vendor for a little while back in the 90s? No, they didn't know. But once they learned, then they're responsible. So I think if you know something about a vendor that is wrong, you're responsible. But I know, like for us, one of the movies that I was an advisor on went through Lionsgate, which also Mercy Me and a lot of the other movies went through. Lionsgate is known as a distributor for publishing some of the worst horror movies in history, but they also publish a lot of and distribute a lot of faith-based films. So I feel like there's sometimes you're with a distributor or you're with someone that's not your value system, but they're there to serve a role to help you get somewhere. And it's not compromised to be in the same house as them. It's compromised if you made the movie with their standards or values, if you give them creative control, which we've never done. And so I don't know what your business is, but I hope that helps.
Now,
Well,
Shawn,
go ahead.
I know we have to go. But Megan, I have big decisions coming, and I seem to freeze because I don't want to make the wrong one and not be in God's will. This is where I'm going to say, Megan, trust your relationship with God. Trust that you're a loved daughter of God. Trust that he is speaking to you always, and ask him for these big decisions, and then take the time to listen and hear. He will speak to you.
So good. And hi to some of our friends that are on here. I see Jenna Winston, and I saw earlier Brian Green. We definitely need to have Brian Green on our podcast, Bob. He's so amazing. He's one of our partners and friends. Lives up in the luxurious Sacramento, he said earlier. So it's awesome. Well, Thank you guys for joining. Excuse me. You could join us on Fridays on Exploring the Marketplace. And we have special video versions coming. And so if you guys want to watch the video version, you can head over to YouTube, which will be out. I'm not sure if they're out this Friday or next Friday, but they're out soon. And so you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notifications on when they come out. And if you're enjoying these videos, please leave feedback and tell us, thank you so much, or this is what I liked about it, or I'd like to see more of these types of people on it. And you can go back and watch previous question and answer times where we have these marketplace conversations. We've done, I think, 3 other ones, one with Christian Garrett, and then 2 other ones that you're going to really enjoy as well, David Lee and someone else. So I do like how I said someone else, because my brain, I'm already on what we're doing today. Bob, I'm on what we're doing today. So it's gonna be a good podcast this week, though. We hope you'll listen to it on Friday. And thanks, Bob, for joining me for our marketplace conversations.
Oh, thank you, Shawn. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we love your questions. Go to www.bowlesministries.com. There's a button that says questions for Shawn and Bob, and record your audio question, and then we will answer them in the podcast. Right, Shawn?
Yeah, and we have room for more than one question per podcast. So feel free to ask your questions, and we're collecting right now for future podcasts, even today. So thank you, guys. Well, have a great day. On all the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our own platform, bowlesministries.com, where we're learning and growing together. Thank you so much for joining today. Bye.
Bye.